General Hospital spoilers for Thursday, August 7th, tease that the heat of August brings more than just summer intensity to Port Charles. It ignites betrayal, deception, and dangerous alliances that could change everything. Lulu Spencer paced anxiously outside the Metro Court, her eyes darting over her shoulder as she clutched her phone tighter. The air was thick with tension, and every minute that passed without Carly Spencer's arrival only deepened Lulu's sense of urgency. She wasn't just there for a friendly conversation. She was about to ask Carly to join her in a high-stakes alliance that could unravel more than just family bonds. It could expose deep-rooted manipulation and cost them dearly. When Carly finally appeared, her presence commanded attention, poised and confident as always. Lulu wasted no time. She laid everything out. The strange behavior Rocco had been exhibiting, the way he was suddenly pulling away from both her and Dante, the subtle manipulations she had begun to suspect. Lisa Labrecque's name came up quickly, and with it, a storm of emotion crossed Carly's face. Liesl had always walked a fine line between brilliance and cruelty, and the idea that she might be influencing Rocco was not far-fetched. Carly's expression darkened. She agreed to help, but not without a warning. If they failed, the consequences could be devastating. Liesl wasn't someone you cross lightly. Meanwhile, across town, Harris and Chase sat quietly beside Willow Tate in the hospital courtyard. The breeze carried the faint scent of gardenias, but neither of them noticed. Willow had been spiraling lately, consumed by the guilt and fear of her recent actions, and Chase, still carrying a quiet affection for her, was doing everything he could to keep her grounded. He gently reminded her of her strength, her past sacrifices, and how she had once found a way out of darkness before. But even as his words soothed her, something in Chase's demeanor shifted. A decision had been made in his mind, one he hadn't yet voiced. Chase decided to act. He began digging into the truth behind Willow's late-night disappearances and her connection to Daisy and Sasha. What he uncovered was far more than he expected. Michael Corinthos got wind of Chase's activities, and when the confrontation came, it wasn't subtle. Michael cornered Chase outside General Hospital, fury in his voice as he accused Chase of betraying trust. But it wasn't just Chase who faced Michael's wrath. Michael turned the spotlight on Willow, publicly revealing her role in surveilling Daisy and Sasha, his niece and a woman he had once loved. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Gasps echoed across the hallway as Willow's face paled. The perfect image she had so carefully constructed began to crumble. Elsewhere, tensions simmered beneath the surface as Carly confronted Drew Kane. The look in her eyes was sharper than usual, colder. Carly had always been loyal, fiercely protective of her family and her inner circle, but betrayal struck her in ways few could survive. She accused Drew of aligning himself with those who would hurt her family, and while he tried to defend his actions, Carly's mind was already elsewhere. It wasn't just about Drew, it was about Willow. It had been Willow who pulled Carly into this under the guise of protecting Daisy, but now, knowing Willow's duplicity, Carly saw it for what it was: manipulation. And Carly Spencer did not take kindly to being used. At the Corinthos penthouse, a far more intimate drama was unfolding. Sonny Corinthos and Justine Turner lay tangled in rumpled sheets, the haze of morning still fresh on their skin. It had been a night of passion, of forgotten rules and surrendered caution. But they weren't alone for long. Dante arrived unannounced, hoping to discuss the growing tension between Lulu and Liesl, but the moment he stepped through the door and saw his father in bed with Justine, he froze. The discomfort was instant, visceral. Sonny, scrambling to throw on a robe, called out to his son, trying to explain, but Dante shook his head. He didn't need the details. He didn't want them. "You love who you love, Dad," Dante said quietly, "but don't expect me to pretend it doesn't change things." And with that, he walked away, leaving Sonny chasing the echo of his retreating footsteps. Young Danny, wise beyond his years, had his own moment of clarity. Sitting beside Rocco on the park bench near the docks, he offered quiet advice. It wasn't grand or philosophical, just the kind of grounded truth that only kids who'd grown up in chaos could share. He spoke about family, about the importance of seeing through the fog adults always seem to live in. And Rocco listened. Somewhere deep inside, the grip Liesl had been tightening began to loosen, even if only slightly. Jason Morgan, ever the silent protector, moved through the corridors of General Hospital with a mission. He found Liesel by the nurse's station, her normally severe expression softened by fatigue and frustration.
He didn't waste time.
Brit's alive, he told her, watching the disbelief, the hope, and then the overwhelming emotion ripple across her face.
Liesel gripped his arm, needing the reassurance to be real. Jason nodded. But we need to find her now. There's not much time.
The urgency in his voice wasn't lost on Liesel. She agreed instantly, her mind already racing with possibilities. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that the resort Brit had been staying at was on borrowed time. A silent timer ticked in the shadows of a luxury suite, the explosive device set with surgical precision. The blast, when it came, would tear through the peace of the resort and leave a trail of blood and ruin. Back in the world of boardrooms and backstabbing, Tracy Quartermain was sharpening her own brand of warfare. She had always known how to wield power with elegance and cruelty, and she had no patience for Jen Sidwell's meddling in deception. With swift precision, she bought out Sidwell's shares, offering a hefty compensation that would look generous on paper but sting with humiliation.
Sidwell's fury was barely contained.
He accepted the payout, but his eyes were already scanning the horizon for ways to strike back. Tracy had won the battle, but the war was only beginning.
In a quiet corner of the hospital, Isaiah Gannon leaned against the wall outside Willow's room, a notebook in hand and his expression unreadable.
Their earlier conversation had been brief but revealing. He had pieced together enough to suspect a deeper truth beneath Willow's carefully controlled facade. The more she tried to deflect, the more certain Isaiah became. And he wasn't just going to sit on this information. Stop now, he had warned her, or the truth comes out.
All of it.
Willow had smiled thinly, but the tremor in her hand betrayed her. She was running out of places to hide. As evening fell over Port Charles, the city seemed to hold its breath. Every character stood at a precipice. Some clung to secrets, others prepared for war. The alliance between Carly and Lulu, though forged in desperation, now carried the weight of something far more dangerous. Liesel, blinded by her hope for Brit, unknowingly walked toward a possible death sentence. Michael's outburst had set in motion a chain of consequences neither he nor Willow could control. And while Sonny tried to mend his fractured bond with Dante, he didn't realize that other storms were gathering around him.
Ones even he might not be able to calm. Each thread wove tighter into the tapestry of chaos.
Port Charles was no stranger to darkness, but as this new wave of conflict surged forward, even the most powerful figures would be tested. Alliances would shatter. Blood would spill. And in the end, the question would no longer be who survives, but who's left to pick up the pieces.
The hours after the sun set over Port Charles brought no peace.
The air remained heavy, not from heat but from the pressure of mounting secrets and fractured alliances. Inside Carly Spencer's office at the Metro Court, Lulu Spencer leaned over a spread of documents and photos, her face pale and determined. She traced her finger along a photo of Rocco on the playground, standing beside Liesel Albrecht. It wasn't the picture itself that disturbed her, it was the look in her son's eyes.
Not fear, but detachment.
It was as if he no longer recognized the mother who had once been his whole world.
Carly moved with purposeful calm, reviewing messages intercepted from Liesel's burner phone.
Through an anonymous source she refused to reveal to Lulu, Carly had managed to get a few leads that placed Liesel at several child psychology seminars in recent weeks, one of which had been led by a disgraced behavioral expert with ties to underground memory manipulation experiments. Lulu's breath caught when Carly suggested that Liesel may be trying to rewrite Rocco's memories or implant suggestions to sever his emotional ties to Lulu and Dante. The stakes were no longer just about custody or influence. This was psychological warfare. Far away from the heated strategy session, Liesel sat quietly by the window of her apartment. The news from Jason still echoed in her ears. Brit was alive. She should be ecstatic, but a sliver of doubt gnawed at her. Why now? Why had Brit not contacted her? The answer came with a knock at the door. A stranger, claiming to be an associate of Brit, handed her an encrypted flash drive. Liesel loaded it into her computer and watched, eyes wide with shock, as Brit's face appeared on screen. Her daughter looked tired, thinner, but alive. She spoke rapidly, warning Liesel that she had been working undercover at the resort, investigating illicit biotech operations connected to the Cassidy legacy. Britt pleaded with her mother not to trust anyone, not Jason, not even the WSB. Then the video cut to static. Liesel's heart thundered as she realized she was being hunted. And that made her dangerous. At the hospital chapel, Willow knelt before the altar, hands trembling. Her double life had unraveled too quickly. Michael's public accusation had destroyed her credibility, and she could sense the walls closing in. Daisy hadn't returned any of her calls. Sasha had blocked her number. Even Chase, her quiet ally, had distanced himself. The only one still keeping her secrets was Isaiah Gannon. And he had made it clear his silence had a price. She felt him before she heard him enter. Isaiah's presence was cold, unreadable. He took a seat beside her and handed her a sealed envelope. "This is the last time," he said. "End this surveillance, come clean, or I go to the press. Everything you've done, everything you are, will come out." Willow clutched the envelope, her pulse racing. She had played the game too long. Now it was turning against her. In a private wing of General Hospital, Jason met with a forensics contact who had just returned from the remnants of the luxury resort Britt had been staying in. The explosion had been surgical, professional. It wasn't an accident. The device had been planted in Britt's suite, and though multiple bodies had been recovered, Britt was not among them. But there was blood. Enough to suggest serious injury. Jason's jaw clenched as he examined the evidence. Liesel was in more danger than she realized. If someone was willing to kill Britt to silence her, they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate Liesel either. Without delay, Jason ordered a silent security team to follow Liesel discreetly. He didn't trust the PCPD to protect her, not when he knew someone on the inside was leaking information. Tracy Quartermaine, unaware of the chaos surrounding Britt and Liesel, was enjoying her moment of triumph. She had rid deception of Jen Sidwell and restored her influence over the company. But her celebration was short-lived. That morning, Tracy received a package at the Quartermaine mansion, a set of surveillance photos. In them, Tracy was seen speaking with the board members who had agreed to oust Sidwell, one of whom was apparently being investigated for fraud. Along with the photos was a note: "You cost me my position. I'll cost you your empire." Sidwell hadn't gone quietly. He had gone underground. And now, he was ready to burn the whole structure down. Sonny Corinthos sat alone in his dimly lit kitchen, sipping bourbon, lost in thought. Justine had left hours ago, giving him space after the confrontation with Dante. But her perfume still lingered in the air, a ghost he wasn't sure he wanted to chase away. His phone buzzed. A message from Dante. "Just one line, we need to talk. It's about Lulu." Sonny rose, grabbed his jacket, and headed out. He found Dante waiting near the footbridge, arms folded, jaw tight. The two men stood in silence until Dante broke it. He told Sonny about Lulu's suspicions, about Liesel's manipulation of Rocco, and about Carly's involvement. Sonny's expression changed. This wasn't just family drama anymore, it was an attack on blood. "We end this," Sonny said flatly. Dante nodded. There was no more room for diplomacy. Elsewhere, Danny returned to the park to meet Rocco again. The boy had been quieter than usual, his eyes darting nervously whenever someone passed by. Danny gently pushed a comic book into Rocco's hands and said nothing. Instead, he waited. Eventually, Rocco confessed that someone had told him his mother didn't want him anymore. That she was happier without him. Danny's stomach twisted. "Who told you that?" he asked. Rocco didn't answer. But Danny already knew. Later that night, Danny approached Jason and whispered what Rocco had said. Jason's entire body tensed. The attack was deeper than anyone realized. Back in the Corinthos penthouse, Justine returned unexpectedly, her face pale. She had received a text from an unknown number, an image of her and Sonny in bed. "You've made dangerous enemies," the text read, followed by a skull emoji. Justine handed the phone to Sonny without a word.
Sonny's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just personal revenge anymore. Someone was gathering leverage on everyone connected to him. He needed to find out who, and fast. The next day, at the Quartermain estate, Tracy called a meeting with her legal team. She had spent a lifetime outmaneuvering enemies, but something about Sidwell's attack felt different. It wasn't about power anymore, it was about destruction. Total and personal. She needed allies, not pawns. And there was only one person she could think of who might match Sidwell's cunning with equal ruthlessness. Carly. Across town, Willow stood on the rooftop of the hospital, staring out over the city. She thought about jumping, not to die, but to disappear. Start over. The envelope Isaiah had given her was still in her purse. Inside it were surveillance logs, transcripts of her conversations with Daisy and Sasha, proof of her betrayal. She couldn't undo it. But maybe, just maybe, she could still do something right. She pulled out her phone and called Daisy. When the girl answered, Willow whispered, "We need to meet. Tonight. I owe you the truth." That night, Daisy showed up, suspicious but curious. The two sat beneath a canopy of stars in Rice Park. Willow explained everything. How it started with good intentions, how it spiraled out of control, how she felt trapped in layers of lies. Daisy didn't speak for a long time. Then she simply said, "I can't forgive you. But I can let go." She stood and walked away, leaving Willow in tears but somehow lighter. But peace was still elusive. At General Hospital, an explosion rocked the East Wing, sending alarms blaring. Doctors and nurses screamed as smoke filled the halls. Jason, arriving just moments after the blast, sprinted toward the chaos. His heart pounded. Liesl had been scheduled for a meeting in that very wing. Emergency crews flooded the building, searching for survivors. As the smoke cleared, Jason spotted a familiar coat on the floor. It was Liesl's. Bloodied and torn. And then, movement. She was alive. Barely. He dropped beside her, cradling her head, and whispered, "Stay with me. We're not done yet." Liesl's eyes fluttered open. Through cracked lips, she whispered one name, Victor. At that moment, Jason understood. Victor Cassadine wasn't dead. He had been orchestrating everything. Britt's disappearance. The surveillance. The explosion. It was all part of a much larger plan. Port Charles had no idea what was coming. But one thing was clear, nothing would ever be the same. And for those who had dared to dig too deep, redemption would come at a steep price. Sirens wailed through Port Charles as the sun began to rise, casting an eerie orange glow across the damaged wing of General Hospital. The remnants of smoke curled above the emergency entrance while chaos unfolded inside, doctors shouting, gurneys rolling, and families demanding answers. Amidst the confusion, Jason Morgan stood at the nurse's station, his black shirt stained with blood, not his own, but Liesl's. She had survived, but just barely. She was unconscious now, intubated, the explosion having torn through her shoulder and left shrapnel dangerously close to her heart. Dante arrived just as Jason finished speaking with the surgical team. Jason turned to him, jaw tight. "Victor Cassadine," he said flatly. She said his name before she passed out. Dante stared at him. "He's dead." Jason shook his head. "No. He's not. And he's been hiding in plain sight." The realization sent a ripple through the remaining alliances. Back at the Metro Court, Lulu stared blankly at the news report playing on the lobby television. The words "terrorist act, unknown assailant, and several injured" repeated in a sickening loop. Her hands trembled as she looked toward the elevator. Her plan to confront Liesl had backfired catastrophically. Instead of exposing her, she had potentially walked right into Victor Cassadine's trap. Carly was already one step ahead. She gathered every file, photo, and message connected to the conspiracy. She no longer cared about discretion. If Victor was alive, then nothing was safe, her family, her business, her city. She called Tracy first. "We need to move. Now." Tracy didn't hesitate. She ordered every financial record from Sidwell's buyout traced.
Within minutes, they found it, a hidden transfer routed through an offshore account tied to a Cassadine front company. Tracy's voice dropped as she processed the implication.
Sidwell was never after deception. He was after access. He's working with Victor.
And Victor now had a backdoor into the most influential corners of Port Charles.
The attacks were not just physical.
They were financial, psychological, and personal.
Meanwhile, Willow, now a pariah in the hospital halls, stood outside Liesl's recovery room, watching her enemy turn victim through the glass.
Guilt curled tightly around her. She had thought she understood manipulation. She had thought she could play the game. But Victor was rewriting the rules. Isaiah found her there, silent, broken.
"You want redemption," he said. "Then help me stop him. I know where he is." Isaiah handed her a folded map and a thumb drive.
It contained surveillance logs, phone pings, and intercepted coordinates that led to an abandoned WSB safe house on the outskirts of the city.
"He's there. Or at least, that's where the next move will come from." At the same time, Sonny and Justine confronted their own reckoning.
The leaked photos had reached the media.
Justine's career in public relations was in flames. Sonny's alliances were crumbling. But for once, Sonny didn't care about the headlines.
He only cared about the threat to his family. "Victor wants chaos," he muttered, gripping his phone.
"He'll go after the kids next. That's what he always does." Danny and Rocco, under Jason's orders, had already been moved to a secure location. But Sonny knew it wouldn't be enough.
Victor thrived on psychological torment.
He didn't want to kill them. He wanted to twist them. Sonny wouldn't let that happen.
By nightfall, Jason, Willow, Carly, Isaiah, and Dante were gathered at the outskirts of the city, looking out over the crumbling remains of the old safe house.
Silence surrounded them. No movement. No guards. No lights.
But the intel was clear: Victor had been here.
And maybe still was.
Jason led them in first, gun drawn, his steps measured. The others followed, tension bristling with each creaking floorboard.
The house was empty. Or so it seemed.
Down in the basement, behind a false wall, they found the truth. Photos, maps, documents, dozens of them lined the walls.
Each sheet was marked with targets: Willow, Michael, Liesl, Sonny, even Britt.
A large corkboard stood at the center, with one word circled at the top in red: resurgence. And pinned below it, a grainy photograph of Victor Cassadine himself.
Smiling.
Suddenly, Jason's phone buzzed.
A single message lit up the screen. "You're too late." And then, the lights went out. Chaos exploded. A flash grenade burst near the staircase, throwing Carly to the floor.
Isaiah pulled Willow to cover, shielding her with his own body as the basement filled with smoke. Dante fired toward the sound of retreating footsteps, catching only shadows. When the haze cleared, Victor was gone, but he had left his message.
Back at General Hospital, Liesl stirred.
Weak, barely conscious, she whispered a name to the nurse beside her.
"Britt."
She opened her eyes fully for the first time, panic flooding them.
"She's not dead."
The nurse rushed out to page Jason.
But Jason already knew.
As they had scoured Victor's basement war room, they had found one final video file. It showed Britt alive, imprisoned, in a dim cell somewhere cold.
She was bloodied but defiant.
"This isn't over," she said, looking straight into the camera.
"He's not done. And he's not working alone." The screen went black. Back at the Quartermain mansion, Tracy prepared a press release.
She would not let fear dictate the future.
Port Charles needed to know the truth. They needed to prepare. And most importantly, they needed to unify.
As the sun rose again, the city held its breath. The lies had been exposed. The alliances had shifted. But the war had only just begun. Victor Cassadine had returned from the dead, and this time, he wasn't coming alone.